everybody, and welcome to a very special Comic Lab, the show about making comics.
And making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, the author of the Webcomics Handbook on Substack and the creator of Evil Inc.
And I'm his pal Dave Kellett, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon, and co-director of the comics documentary Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So Dave, let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend, because we have a very special pre-recorded show, live show, recorded at the Comic-Con Museum in San Diego, California, at the National Cartoonist Society Reuben Award weekend. Delightful weekend. Brad and I had a tremendous time, and we recorded 2 live shows that we'll be playing for you this week and next week.
So great this
and we are
week.
very excited to bring them to you.
And we want to thank the following 3 people that joined us on stage. They were so great. You're going to love them. Maria Scrivan is the creator of the YA graphic novel series Nat Enough. Hector Cantu is the writer of the comic strip Baldo. And Dana Simpson, creator of the comic strip Phoebe and Her Unicorn.
And without further ado, let's cut away to the Comic-Con Museum beautiful theater and hear that show.
My friends, welcome to Comic Lab Live. Thank you for being here. My name is Brad Geiger. This is my friend Dave Kellett. We're both cartoonists. We both do a podcast called Comic Lab, which you can find every week wherever you get your podcasts, where we spend time talking comics with each other. And we're really thrilled today that we're going to be able to talk comics with some of the most noteworthy cartoonists working today.
What we're going to do today is we're going to bring up each one of them individually, spend about 5, 6, 7 minutes with them, getting to know them. And then we're going to do kind of Johnny Carson style, bumping down the couch, and then do a more lively 40-minute talk about issues facing cartoonists right now and where we anticipate cartooning in the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Sort of what's the best practices that are working for us all and what is not working for us all.
Absolutely. And Johnny Carson was a guy that used to be on TV doing what was called a talk show. He was,
and TV was a medium that people used to watch. All right, so let's get started. So by a show of hands, who here has been to the Comic-Con Museum before? I have not. A couple of hands in the. Let's just say I've been to Comic-Con 25 years running as a Southern California native. And this place is bonkers. I did not realize how cool and big this is to have a celebration of comics like this. So thank you to the Comic-Con Museum for hosting us today, for those that are in the room, to the staff. And thank you to Karen and the board for inviting us to do this show. But let me ask you one quick question.
Yeah.
Do you remember your first Comic-Con moment where you met a hero or met a...
Oh, met a hero? So the first year that I was here at Comic-Con was 2001. I was publishing with a group called Keen Spot at that point, and they had me on a panel. And my wife was there. That made it even better. My wife was there. And after I was on the panel, I came down, and this guy, young kid, comes up to me and says, "Mr. Geiger, I'm a big fan." And he couldn't gather himself. He was so nervous. He couldn't gather. And I said, oh, thank you so much. I love the fact that you read my comic, because this was brand new in the early 2000s. But he was so overwhelmed that he was having a hard time gathering his thoughts. We walked away. My wife says, "Oh my God, you've got a fanboy." And I said, "Yeah, it's great. This is amazing." And I said, that was great. I didn't know anybody was reading this thing. And 5 hours later or so, I was turning the corner, and I saw John Buscema from Marvel Comics. If you ever read How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, that was John, okay? And I'm like, oh my God, that's him. And I had brought my copy of How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, which was my best friend growing up when I had no friends. And I walked up to the table and I said, Mr. And I was tearing up, and I couldn't gather my thoughts. And it's like, that was Comic-Con to me. 1 minute, you are somebody's idol, and the next minute, you're meeting your idol, and it was an amazing experience.
Well, that's kind of what I love about the NCS, too, is that it's a room full of peers, but also the pros that made you want to get into comics.
Yeah.
So, like, I round the corner at an NCS meeting, and I literally become 10 years old again, and it's a joy-filled thing. So to the peers and pros in the room, thank you for the joy that you have given me through your comics, because It is a wonderful circle that we pay forward to the next generation. And anyway, well, let's bring our first guest up on stage. So our first guest is going to be Maria Scrivan, a delightful human being who many of you know. Maria is the author of Nat Enough, a best-selling series of books, 6 series now in the series now, featuring Natalie, a girl based on her Connecticut childhood. Her comic Half Full also appears 3 days a week at Go Comics, and you can find her at Maria Scrivan, and that's SCRIVAN.com. Maria, come on out and join us. Thank you. Grab a mic, have a seat. So the fun way to start is to ask, because we all sort of had a comic that sparked with us when we were a kid, and it made us want to become a cartoonist. What was that one for you?
So Peanuts and Garfield, but I have this great photo of me reading Garfield as a kid, and I'm not just reading it, I'm studying it. I got every single one the second they came out, and I wanted to, that was it. I was like, I need to do this. I want to be a cartoonist. It wasn't just like reading and laughing. I was like, I need to know how to do this. This is my life. So I've always wanted to be a cartoonist.
Yeah.
Always.
Absolutely. And growing up in Connecticut, you took a lot of your personal stories and
Yes.
put those into the Nat series,
Yep.
right? Can you talk about that? How that affected your view towards writing?
Oh, absolutely. Let me back up one step about the Garfield thing. So
Yeah.
you guys were just talking about your heroes. So
Yes,
my
yes.
first my first National Cartoonist Society event was Vegas, which was an amazing first event because it was so over the top and incredible. And Jim Davis was speaking. So my 8-year-old brain blew up immediately because I was like, oh my God, like this is why I wanted to be a cartoonist, and I got to meet him. And even more amazing, I always say in school talks that I really need a time machine to go back to that age, 10 years old, reading Garfield and say, this is going to happen. Like, you're going to have a syndicated comic in newspapers. You're going to write books. And Jim Davis blurbed my book, which I would have never, like, in a million years. It was such an amazing gift for him to do that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so the Natalie stories, and I didn't know Nat was going to be a graphic novel at first. I thought it was going to be more like a spot illustration, wimpy kid type thing. And it just started for me writing vignettes, and I don't even know why I started doing this, of just vignettes of things that happened to me in middle school. And I think for me, it was just a healing process. I had to kind of go back and process this stuff. And looking back, it was really funny. Like, at the time, it was not funny. It was not funny at all. But going back, I was like, there's humor in this. And then I think it was at Crossroads Columbus, I heard Mimi Pond speak about her graphic novel. And I was like, oh my God, this has to be a graphic novel.
Yeah.
Of course. Like, it has to be. I was like, I get to use all these things I love into one place. So that's sort of how it all came together.
I love, too, that I heard a story through the grapevine that you were having trouble but finding completion with the finale of the first book. And you bumped into your 6th grade teacher.
Yes.
From
that
that
was
time.
a crazy story that when I tell it, I feel like I'm making it up because it was so bizarre. I was in a yoga class, and we were...
As one is, yeah,
As
sure.
one is. So, and I don't know why, this never happened in my life, where they asked us to do a creative visualization. So we, you're in child's pose, and then they're like, remember, imagine yourself in 1st grade, 2nd grade. I'm going through all the years. We get to 6th grade, and I can't remember my 6th grade teacher's name, which was so weird because I'm writing a book about 6th grade, right? I totally blank out. I'm like, how could I not remember that? So I decide that day, I was doing a lot of writing down at the beach in Greenwich. It's beautiful on the water, and got a picnic table. That particular same day, I was walking across the parking lot, and there she was, Mrs. Lamazzo, my 6th grade teacher. And after I pulled my jaw off the ground, she was like, Maria, you used to love to write and draw. And she remembered my parents and where they lived, and we sat down for an hour. And what I had forgotten was that it was in her class, we did a book project where we made a book, which was officially my first graphic novel because I had to make a cartoon.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
I won a contest and then went to Hartford, the capital, to get my award. And there's a whole sequence in the end. That became the end of the book. There's a drawing. I literally took the photo of me standing next to her. I have a painting of the Capitol building. Like, it was such a gift. And I really, really believe in synchronicity and creativity. That once you're in it, all these things, if you start paying attention, conversations, books, music, words, all this stuff comes. And that was the most profound, by far, experience. But I noticed that, like, when I'm really in a project and I'm deep in it, all the answers are sort of handed to me. when I
Yes.
start to stay aware, they're sort of given to me, which is magic. It's
Yeah.
absolute magic.
Yeah.
You sound like to me someone that takes the advice that I always give but never take for myself. And that is, do you keep a journal or something like that similar?
I've always kept a journal. I've always kept sketchbooks. And actually, funny enough, the there's on the book Nat for Nothing, which is the fourth book, there's these doubt gremlins. So she works through self-doubt. And I found a doodle of that exact image in one of my journals from 2008.
No way.
I had gone to an Artist Way workshop, which is a wonderful book if you're ever trying to get out of your own way, which I was at the time, with the author, with Julia Cameron herself. And I had doodled that little thing in my journal from that event. I didn't notice it and then make it the cover. I made it the cover and then went back and found it by accident.
Wow.
So, I mean, that was obviously, it was deeply in my subconscious, but yeah.
It
so-
is funny, though, how your creative subconscious is continuously working on a problem for that 10
Yeah.
years, 12 years, 14 years.
Isn't it amazing?
That, like, it's still working back there. That
Yep.
sketch from 2008, was it? Like,
Yes.
I'm always blown away. Don't you find that when
Yes.
like 3 a.m. So like,
Yes.
granted, we all hit writer's block, but suddenly you'll be like, there it is. I've got the idea. Like, why now when I'm driving to Albuquerque is it hitting me?
Yes.
This is amazing. Yeah, but your brain is continuously working on that problem in the background.
Totally. Washing dishes is another one for me. Big
Yeah.
breakthroughs washing dishes. I don't know why. I don't know if it's water.
It's
I
a
don't know.
mindless, and it might be water because it's also the common one there is being in the shower. You
Yes,
get, you
that's
get,
really common.
Yeah.
So there's something about that, and also doing something mindless that you do very often, like
Yeah.
being in the shower or dishes or something like that.
Just distracting enough so that your
Yeah.
sort of super
Right.
ego can't get in the way, I think.
Yeah, that's a good way to, yeah.
Yeah. But okay, so with Nat, it's now 6 books in, you're working on the 7th book. How wonderfully long can you foresee this going for your own career?
I don't know. No, I love it. I love it. And it really has been an amazing healing process for me. And I've learned so much. I mean, it's interesting because Nat was based on my childhood self, but immediately took on a life of her own. And I've
Yeah.
learned so much from her as a character.
Well, and also one last question I wanted to ask you is that in our lifetime, the YA graphic novel has become such a wonderful outlet for all sorts of cartoonists that we didn't necessarily grow up with. There was
Right.
probably one YA graphic novel when we were growing up, maybe 2, maybe if we're lucky.
I didn't know
I'd really
about
have to
it,
stretch it
yeah.
to think of a second one. But what a great outlet, though, for you to have to fall into that is
Yeah.
for you as both healing and to pay it forward for the kids that are reading it. you
Yeah,
know?
it's amazing. And I know that kids love graphic novels so much. And so many kids I have said that my book is their first book that they've read cover to cover. And then they feel successful because it's a 235-page book. It's
Yes.
like, I did this thing.
I did that.
I had one particular girl, she was so excited and so proud of herself that she had gotten through that. And I think that's amazing. So
Yeah.
anything the kids are want to read, it's amazing.
Absolutely. My friends, Maria Scrivan.
Thank you.
We're going to ask her to stay with us, and we're going to bring out our next guest, who is Hector Cantu. When Baldo was launched in 2000, it was the only syndicated comic strip that featured a Latino family. It now appears in more than 400 newspapers, and it's nominated for a Silver Reuben in the newspaper comic strip division, and also be looking for the new Baldo animated series coming out on a new streaming platform called A+. My friends, please help me welcome Hector Cantu.
I like how Brad almost accidentally said it was the Hector show. That
Yeah.
was you were a half a second away from saying that.
Here's
That
the
was
deal.
great.
I was talking to Hector before the show, and you could absolutely have a Hector show, and I would watch it. You're a great talker.
Well, thanks. Thanks, guys.
So let's ask the fun first question. What was the sparking comic that got you when you were a kid?
Not really a comic, but Is this thing on? But Mad Magazine, of
Yes.
course, like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of us. I used to run to the grocery store back when running to the grocery store was a thing to buy your comics and your magazines. And I would devour Mad Magazine as a kid. And I always noticed I would read the bylines, right? I read the bylines, and I noticed
it meant enough to you.
meant enough
Yeah.
where I would go like, oh, Sergio Aragonés and Antonio Prohias. It's like those guys, they might be like Latino guys like me.
absolutely,
So
yeah.
they were like role models. And the story I tell is I actually ripped off one of Sergio's comics and sent it to Mad because, I thought it was working for him. I'll just do the same thing. But it was a different ending. And of course, I got a rejection letter. 12 years old, successfully rejected from Mad Magazine.
12 years old.
12 years old. I'm very proud of that accomplishment. But I do remember it was a handwritten letter on Mad Stationery. Yeah, on Mad Stationery, there was a watermark of Alfred E. Newman's face on the sheet. And it said, maybe someday you'll join us here at the Gang of Idiots.
I got to ask, do you still have that letter?
I was 12 years old.
Oh, no. Here's the sad ending coming.
I was not too bright.
Yeah.
I just lost it. I think I threw it away in a fit of rage.
Yeah. The only reason I ask is because I have a large file of rejection letters
Do you
from
keep
syndicates.
them? You kept them?
I run on spite. I kept those. They power me every now and again when I think maybe I don't have it, or I'm thinking about
rifling through the.
pull those.
I'm gonna show United Media.
Right.
Absolutely.
So did you tell? Let's jump forward for a second. Did you ever get to tell Sergio in person at an NCS event or a Comic-Con? Or
That's the great thing about NCS, like Maria says. You come to these and you see your heroes.
Yeah.
And when I came one of the first few times, I saw Jack Davis.
Oh,
And-
wow,
and,
yeah.
And you can see in the pictures, like, I got either my wife or a friend to take a picture of me with Jack Davis, and I have just this horrible big grin on my face, like I've just lost my mind, you know? And it was like that with the pictures with Jack Davis, with Al Jaffe, with Sergio. I think I told Sergio that story. I might have, and he was a nice guy about it.
I have a photo from my first NCS Reuben's weekend where I'm in the background. I had just said hi and met Bill Keane for the first time, and someone else took a photo with Bill Keane, but I'm in the background going like this. Like still genuinely excited to be in the presence of Bill Keane. I was like, oh, that's Bill Keane. And I was like, I such youthful idiocy of like, oh.
It's the fanboy stuff.
Yeah,
that you're
absolutely.
talking about.
Absolutely. So when did you first put ink to paper? When did you first start drawing? It was 12
It was
with Mad
about
Magazine?
that time. I was drawing, dreams to be a comic book writer.
Yeah.
I always had that in the back of my mind to do comics. But, a lot of kids do. It's like, I want to be a firefighter. It's one of those jobs that all of us want to do. It was just in the back of my mind. I studied journalism, so I worked for newspapers as a journalist, and I always kept that in the back of my mind if maybe someday I can do a comic. And I was lucky enough that I had a friend of mine, Carlos Castellanos. We teamed up. We produced Baldo strips, sent them out to the syndicates, and we were lucky enough to get an offer.
Which, by the way, 20 years now. Come on, 20 years.
Almost 25.
Almost 25. That's great.
We're getting gray up here.
How in the know are you each with each other's process of what works, what doesn't work? I'm always curious about that with teams because a lot of us work individually, you know what I mean? And we're kind of on our own island. So I'm always sort of fascinatedly peeking in the window of like teams and like how they work.
We found out.
Because he's in Florida, right? Sorry to interrupt
He's in
you.
West Palm Beach.
Yeah.
And I'm in Dallas. We found out really, afterwards that we had so much in common.
Mm-hmm.
We're like pretty much born the same year. We both had the same kind of car.
Whoa.
Yeah, just
Did you both steal from Sergio? Was that
and it was just a lot of things that I think we were just in sync for a lot of the things we were doing.
Yeah.
So we work really well. Just, it's just a natural thing, I think. It's just a happenstance that we don't really argue that. We did maybe early. We would like have, butt heads over stuff. But now we just let the thing work itself out and the comic produces itself and we're both happy doing it.
Absolutely.
How did you two meet?
I was a magazine editor in Santa Barbara in the 90s, and I was responsible for hiring everybody. I would hire the freelance writers, photographers, illustrators to do spot illustrations. And I saw Carlos's work in one of those old Illustrator catalogs where you buy an ad and you put your phone number. And I saw his work, and I said, well, this looks pretty good. And I called him, and he was really cheap. So I hired him.
The hallmark of a cartoonist.
I hired him on the spot to draw for the magazine. And it was only later that I said, I want to do a comic. Are you interested in doing this? And he was like, sure, let's give it a shot.
Yeah. In the introduction, I mentioned that when Baldo was first syndicated, it was the first Latino family shown on the funnies, on the newspaper funny
Family,
pages.
right.
Yeah. Talk about the responsibility that comes with that, because that would, in terms of being creative, that seems like it's an awful lot to carry.
Both a blessing and a curse in a way. Yeah.
It is kind of. I mean, if there were like 25 other Latino families out there, it would be like a Latino dog.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if it'd be like you could move on to different species,
Right, right.
away from humans. But when you are like the only Latino family, yeah, you got to think about how are kids going to read this? How are they
Right.
going to respond to this? Do I have this responsibility to how people see the strip and the characters? And so, yeah, that was there for a while.
Yeah.
The characters have kind of grown on their own. It was such an honor earlier this year for the guys at Blondie did a daily strip. And they came to visit the daughter and her as she's a waitress in the restaurant. And they said, and Blondie says, how's the clientele? And they showed the kids in the cafe. And they included Baldo and the Zitz kids, and I was like, wow, this is such a moment for the characters to be part of the comics page.
Yeah.
And when I find these guys out there, I'm going to thank them very much and kiss their feet for including Baldo in Blondie. But they're just a normal comic strip family is the way I see it. They have certain things that they deal with, and that's my job, to make sure it's different than Luann, different than Zitz. And I swear to guys, to Jerry, Scott, and Karen and Greg, I read something, I go, and I'm writing it, and I go, Luann would never do this. And I write it, or Jeremy would never do this. To me, that's my goal. I got to be different from those guys.
Well, like the storyline that you did for Dreamers, which I thought was beautifully handled, by the way, that is not a story that you see in other comic strips.
No,
you know?
no.
So
that was one of those instances where I was like, Jeremy would never
Take that, Greg Evans. Yeah, exactly.
Go on he would never go like on a march for Dreamers and downtown. So I look for that stuff. And another thing I think of, if Baldo was a real character in an urban high school, what would he do? What would be in his life? What pressures would be in his life? So I kind of deal with that a lot too.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, one final question before we go on to our next guest. So as you're developing for TV, is it a unique thing where your baby that you've carried for almost 25 years now, a little bit you have to hand it off to a new team and let them find their own magic with it, right? Talk about that for a second.
Yeah, TV is totally a teamwork thing. It's putting your trust in the production crew. You help out as much as you can, but I think a lot of the TV production folks like to keep the writers at arm's length away from the process. But this team was really cool in the way they picked up a lot of the themes of Baldo and the way they come across in the TV show. So I was pretty happy the way it turned out.
Great.
Absolutely.
Great.
My friends, Hector Cantu.
And gang.
You can check out Hector's work at gocomics.com/Baldo. And now it is my distinct honor, as soon as I get my notes, because I want to do this right. Reuben Award nominee Dana Simpson burst onto the webcomic scene with her early 2000s standout comic Ozzie and Millie. In 2012, she launched Phoebe and Her Unicorn, which is syndicated by Andrews McMeel. Phoebe books have sold over 4 million copies and have landed on the New York Times, no, give it up, and have landed on the New York Times bestseller list. Please welcome Dana Simpson.
Hi.
It's a delight to have Dana with us, too, because we all sort of started together. I think we all bumped into each other at a Comic-Con in like 2000, 1999, something like that.
2001.
2001.
So, San Diego Comic-Con in 2001. All three of us were there. We were at the Keen Spot table. When you guys contacted me about coming on this, I dug around in my stuff. I had a vague idea where this was. I found this sheet of Bristol that I passed around the table that everybody drew on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I should have brought it. I mean, I know it's a podcast, so like people will be taking my word for what's on it. But yeah, I still have this sheet that like everybody that was I got everybody pretty much that was at that table to draw on it, and yeah, I should probably hang that up.
That's awesome.
It deserves to be somewhere other than just a drawer in my house. I should hang it up or something.
So we first met you when you were doing Ozzie and Millie, but take us back to when you first found the spark for you with cartooning. Like, what was the title or the cartoonist that made you want to draw?
There's a couple answers to that. The first one is Peanuts. I mean, who wasn't inspired by Peanuts, right? But my mom had this big treasury that she'd had since the 60s that was around the house, and I gravitated to it when I was a really little kid. I was pretty fascinated by it. I drew my first comic strip when I was 5 years old.
Wow, really?
I still have it. It was called Boo. It was about ghosts.
I love it already.
Yeah, the story of it is these ghosts come into the panel and they say, hi. And then they laugh for some reason. And then there's lightning and they're scared. And then they go to sleep.
So it's a typical hero's journey kind of comic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also like a standard I have struggled to live up to in terms of quality since then.
Fun fact, though, about that comic strip, stolen from Sergio Aragonés. So that's
right.
fun fact for that one. So you started 5 years old. Was there ever a school newspaper in high school or college or local that you submitted to?
Middle school.
Middle school, all
we
right.
had a Xeroxed newspaper at my middle school.
Yeah, you did, a Xerox middle school paper.
I was one of the copy editors of the school newspaper when I was 11 years old, and I did a comic strip. It was called Skippy, and it was about it was just like a kid at school comic, and it was bad. I like the ghost one better. Skippy was just sort of me not really knowing what I was doing, and it was like a kid at school, and it was just like whatever bad jokes I had read someplace, and people made fun of it, but that did not deter me.
No, not at all. I mean, like the fun thing about having known you now for 25 years is to see the arc. And now your line art you're writing now is so joy-filled and crisp and clear and wonderful. What to you in your process now is the most joy-filled part of drawing or writing? Or is it literally clicking send on that Dropbox file to the editor? Is it getting the spark in the shower? What to you is the most fun part of cartooning?
If I'm not allowed to say my fans, because honestly, most of my readers are kids, and kids are just the best audience.
Yeah.
They are so just purely joyful, and it's infectious, and it rubs off on me. But if I'm going to talk about the process itself and what the joyful moment is, it's the moment that I have written something I like, and I can sit down and I can start drawing. Because to me, writing is the work part. Like,
Yeah.
I don't hate it or anything, but it requires my full attention. It helps if I get out of the house,
Right.
Because then I'm not tempted to do all the stuff that there is to do at my house. But once I've written something, I've got a really satisfying week of strips or whatever. I sit down to actually start drawing, and drawing is the fun part for me. It's the relaxing part. It's almost like meditative. Especially drawing Marigold. Marigold Heavenly
Yeah.
Nostrils, my
Yeah.
unicorn, because she's just all swoopy lines.
Yes.
And I love drawing Marigold.
It
so
comes
much.
through. It comes through in every panel with that. You can tell that it's just you're having so much fun. One question I like to ask every now and again, especially if many of us do both. We're writers and artists. Which do you consider yourself more? Are you more of a writer who draws, or are you an artist who writes?
I feel like there isn't a really simple answer to that question, as I'm sure you would both agree. But
Yeah.
I do describe myself as a writer who draws. I think my art has gotten much better over the years, and I don't think it was ever terrible. But like it has a style. It serves the writing, and I think that I'm a funny writer, I guess. I mean, I try,
would second
I
that,
try not
yes.
to fly in the face of public opinion, and so like I think the writing serves, or the art serves the writing, and so I think I'm a writer first.
Yeah.
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 That's interesting.
I see I'm the same way. If you open up my sketchbook, it's mostly words. Because the art's kind of happening up here, but it's a lot of words.
Oh yeah, when I do the roughs that I send to my editor, a lot of the time there's almost no art in them at all.
Yeah.
I'll draw 4 rectangles, write the dialogue in them, and often Marigold is a letter M and Phoebe is a letter P, and I only even sketch anything out if there's like a pose that I need myself to remember, or I need my editor to understand what I'm doing. Other than that, there's no art in the roughs at all. It's writing first.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question that I actually don't know the answer to? Do you work digitally? Do you work analog? Do you do a mix of printing and lightboxing and scanning? Do you do, what's your process now?
I'm all digital these days. I have been for a while. Ozzy and Millie, back in the day when I was a web cartoonist, was brush and pen on paper.
I remember the brushwork. I was always so impressed with the brushwork.
I was very proud of that. And I used to say, oh, I'm never going to switch off of this. And then I did. I got my first Wacom tablet in 2007. And I wasn't that good at it at first, but I kind of used it for coloring and stuff. And then a few months later, a friend of mine was like, so my work accidentally bought this copy of Manga Studio for Mac, and we can't use it. Do you want it? And so she gave it to me, and I started working in it. And within a few months, I'd kind of fallen in love with working digitally. And I always say I was seduced by the undo function.
Yes, Control Z is it's a siren song. That
I
one.
think it made me a better artist because I can try stuff.
Yes, you can take risks.
Yeah, you can take risks and you can tweak stuff right up to the end. So, you know, I'll be honest, in the Ozzy and Millie years, in the drawing on paper years, it'd be like, those characters are too far to the left, or they're slightly too small for the panel.
Well, well, yeah, exactly.
I guess that's just what this strip looks like. And now it's really easy to just adjust something.
Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely. My friends, help me welcome Dana Simpson. You can check out Dana's work at danasimpson.com.
Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we're going to tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
When you do, you're going to get hours and hours of podcasts that we've recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on ComicLab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, which is a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And listen, if you can't swing a pledge this month, we get it. No worries.
Yeah, listen, you can still support the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.
Just leave a 5-star review and a few kind words.
That, along with mentions on social media, is incredibly helpful.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics.
And now that we've assembled our Avengers, we're going to get down to the nitty.
Assembled our Avengers.
That's right, you're all Avengers.
We would not win many battles, gang. I'm just telling you that. We're not going to do well against Thanos.
It's like if
Hector
every
and
Avenger
Maria.
was Hawkeye.
Yeah, feel free to adjust those mics. We can get you in on the conversation. So one of our goals with the live show was to talk about kind of a forward-looking conversation about comics and where we are now, where we're headed, and so forth. And even though it pains me to do it, even though I'd rather talk about anything, the next words out of my mouth have got to be artificial intelligence and what role that plays, how we see that working as we move forward. And so I ask you, Maria Scrivan, how are you addressing artificial intelligence in your work today?
I've got a lot to say about this, so I'll try and keep it brief. So there's some.
Look at that
so
posture,
I'm
by the way.
sure-
You
I
are
know,
ready
I'm
to
just
talk
like-
about AI.
Artificial intelligence is a big thing. I think analyzing data, medical advances. I just found out that you can get an AI thing on your fridge to tell you you're out of strawberries. Awesome. All that stuff's great. My problem, because my stories are so deeply in my heart and soul, I think as all of our work is. I think that's the part that really bothers me because AI isn't smart enough to make its own thing. It's smart enough to scrape all our stuff.
Right.
And that's the part where I don't feel like it fits. And then for the books that I write about self-esteem and self-love for especially young girls, all kids. And I already know kids are struggling with social media, with filters and stylized. The AI images of people are so stylized. They literally, it's not even an impossible standard. It's literally something that doesn't exist.
Right.
And I'm also worried about it with just misrepresentation. So I don't want it in my work. And as a matter of fact, it's funny, I've been working digitally for a long time and I recently started going back to analog. I worked on a new pitch and I was like, I need to do this in pencil. It was like just sketch out the whole thing. I actually sketched out all the nap books first in pencil completely, even though I started to go digital, but it was so satisfying to sort of be back on paper.
Yeah.
So like the more we go deeper into digital, I'm starting to be like going back to just analog.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pushing me more to handmade. Like I
Oh,
feel
really?
like that's
You're
more,
finding that it's yeah. I mean, there's something to that, isn't there, with pen and ink? So, with Hector, with AI for you, have you encountered it yet, where you're like scared by it, or does it still feel artificial to you?
From my perspective, I'm not worried about it because the worst thing would be, Andrew calls me and says, "Hey, you're fired. we found a computer to write Baldo. We don't need you anymore. And that's not going to happen. I mean, the strip is still mine, right? The brand, the product, the character is still mine. So I could fire myself, I guess,
Right.
and get an artificial intelligence to write Baldo for me, like input all 25 years worth of strips into a database and say, okay, write jokes now. That's the artificial intelligence in my, the way I see it. But it doesn't impact me, I don't think. Now, as far as creating news strips, I don't know if newspapers are going to go out looking for artificial intelligent produced comic strips right now. I just don't see that happening. Like Maria says, it's very personal. It's who you are. It's very hard to get a computer to do that.
Absolutely. Let me ask whoever has an answer, jump in. Have any of you actually experimented with using artificial intelligence as, for example, a writing assistant? Like not to write something, but as a writing assistant. In other words, somebody I was talking to on the Discord server said, yeah, you can't write something with this, but when I'm doing something that I would have in the past put into a Google search, I put into ChatGPT, and I get a lot more thorough answer. Have any of you experimented with that?
I'll be
Dana?
honest about this.
Yeah.
Not so much with writing, but with some of the aspects of art. Like, I would never use a finished AI image in anything that I handed in. But it does sort of take the place of Google image search for certain things. If I'm like, okay, I need this particular room layout, you make that for me, and I'll go, okay, and then I'll just sort of look at that, and then I draw it. And I always feel guilty every time I do this. Because when AI first became a topic a couple years ago when all of this started, all of my artist friends were just freaking out. And they're like, it's coming for our jobs. In 5 years, we'll all be unemployed. And I'm kind of going...
Yeah.
Let's keep an eye on this, but calm down, because like others have said, it's what we do is so personal, and that's what people like about it. And I just can't imagine a computer learning that.
Yeah.
You know what's funny about the Google image thing? Back in the day when people had, I think they called them a morgue. I remember having a cartoon book.
A
It might have
morgue,
been
yeah,
Mort
yeah, yeah.
Gerberg's red cartoon book, which I toted around everywhere, like you did with the Marvel book. The Art of Cartooning by Mort Gerberg was my Bible.
Yes.
But they were like, oh yeah, have a morgue where you'd go into magazines, right, and rip out like here's pictures of dogs or whatever. So that is an interesting way to be able to use it to kind of shortcut Google, because Google Images sometimes takes a long time to find exactly the angle or whatever the pieces
Google
you're
is
looking
worse
for.
than it used to be.
It is. I agree.
It really is.
Oh, and one thing. I'm sorry. One more thing I want to add: the using it for asking questions. Sometimes it gives you thorough answers, but it's not all correct.
But they're not
and
right
that's the part
answers.
that's a little scary,
Yes.
like for research.
What's funny though is as Brad was sort of intimating, and I'll out myself on this, is that I thought, oh, you know what? For the drudge work of comics, maybe AI could help me see. Here are the dimensions of my overall page. Give me 40 different versions of the way I could lay out 9 panels. Right, a fairly simple but drudgery kind of task of how a cartoonist might experiment with thumbnails and see how you do it.
interesting.
So I was like, do that. Hey AI, try this one simple thing. I got back nonsense. Absolute nonsense.
That makes me feel better when I hear
Absolute
stuff like that.
nonsense. Where I was like, well, I feel great about AI
Yeah.
now. It's all going to work out fine. This is great. Because it couldn't even arrange 9 squares. I was like, everything's coming up Dave Kellett today.
I
I'm
love
feeling
a
great.
good photo with 20 fingers. That
Yeah,
always makes me happy.
exactly.
Yeah, and people were all very oh, in 5 years, Hollywood won't exist because AI will just make movies for people. And it's like, you kind of remind me of the people 2 years ago who were telling me I was going to be using NFTs to start my
Yeah.
car.
Exactly.
Doesn't
I
that
know.
sound
Oh, did
familiar?
anybody see The Shining? Somebody made an ending to The Shining with just a script and still photos. It's horrifying, not in a good way. It's just weird. It's like still faces that kind of move, and
Yeah.
it's like, this does not work. This doesn't work.
What's interesting is we're all familiar with the concept of the uncanny valley, right? The idea of you get close enough to human representation that a robot actually starts to look terrifying, right? And what I find with AI, especially with writing, especially with humor, is that the closer that AI tries to get to writing humor, the more terrifyingly we're like, that's not humor. What is that?
Yeah.
That's what is this?
That's not even remotely funny.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, do any of you feel nervous about the aspect just of writing your comic could be replaced?
Hector, what do you think about that?
No, like I said, Baldo is like Carlos and I. It's our business.
Yeah.
We make all those decisions. Carlos and I would be the only ones who would replace ourselves in the process,
Yeah.
right? We own it. It's our property. We can't we're not going to farm it out at this point
Right.
to artificial intelligence. I just don't see that happening
Yeah.
with my comic strip.
So while we wrap up one conversation of horrifying technology, let's open up another one, and that is the decline of social media. We are right now seeing social media disintegrate in front of our eyes. Twitter, which used to be a tried and true way for us, although Maria does not like Twitter, I could just see that.
don't.
No.
I
But
second
Twitter
this.
used to be a tried and true way for some of us to reach our readers. Now we have no reach. Dave, I'm going to mention it. Dave is doing a Kickstarter right now. You're in the midst of a Kickstarter. And I know from your last Kickstarter, when you looked through your numbers and when I looked through mine at the same time, we were getting no bounce from social media, where it used to be we could see it happen. You'd make an announcement. You'd get pledges. It was a boom, boom effect. And now it's not happening. What's working on social media for you right now? What are you concerned about social media? Are you finding things that do work better than some of the things I just mentioned? I know from the look on your face, you've got an answer. Maria, what's going on with your social media?
It's never been I do it because I have to. I don't love it. I'd really rather be writing and drawing. I know that I have to. It's one of the many hats.
Right.
And it's funny because as much as I say, I often feel like I'm shouting into the nothingness. Like whatever I'm doing is just going nowhere. Yet people seem to say like, oh, hey, you've got this going on. Oh, congratulations on that thing. So I'm like, so people are hearing it.
Yeah.
So I've just taken a really passive approach. I put the comic up always if I have a book thing coming up. I did find one thing that has helped me. There's an app called Later that sends it out to Twitter. I'll send it there anyway, even though I never look at it on Twitter.
Yeah.
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook kind of thing. So that helps me. But I feel it's very diluted. Now there's like 9 different platforms that I'm trying to post to with threads. And then I should be doing TikTok. And I end up just feeling guilty all the time that I'm not doing enough.
Right.
But I just have decided that I'll put stuff up there if somebody's interested in figuring out what I'm up to, what I'm doing. But I know that I'm not going to be an influencer. I was never really good at it, and I
Right.
don't love it. I don't love
No,
being on
very
there, so.
very few people love any of the interactions on social media. But Daniel, let me ask you this: so because you reach out to a largely younger audience, or families, I guess larger is a way to say it. Have you ever found? We all agree that Twitter, it was a bad thing when a narcissist on ketamine bought Twitter. But in general, have you found success trying to reach out to your audience on social media, or does that even play a part in your world?
Honestly, it doesn't really play a huge part in what I do. For one thing, my audience is too young to be on Twitter.
Yeah.
I mean, my average reader is like 10. So, the ones that are older maybe find me on social media, but also, I don't know, my audience seems to find me whether I do it or not. So I have leaned hard into not the last few years. I have a Facebook page for Phoebe where I post, mostly just book announcements, and, if I'm going to do an event, I'll post it there. I quit Twitter entirely, 2 years ago. I don't even pay. No, my red line was I don't want to get political, but when that guy bought it, I kind of ignore it these days, and I always hear artists, every other artist I know, is complaining all the time, and I don't blame them. This sounds awful, about having to spend half their time trying to be an influencer, and then that's energy that they're not using to make comics, and that seems like a nightmare scenario to me. And I'm fortunate, I guess, that my career is such that I don't really have to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, wonderful. That's a great thing to be. Hector, for you, how or where or when does social media play into your business approach to your comic?
Well, like Maria said, and even Dana, I'm not a huge social media person. So it's falling apart and going all to heck. That's fine
whatever.
with me.
Yeah.
That's less work to do. But, I do the postings, the very bare minimum postings, and we'd grown our audience on Facebook and a few other, at least on Facebook, to several thousand, and then it got hacked. And so I had to start all over again.
That's
and it's
horrible.
okay, this is just it's already not worth your time, and then have to
Yeah.
start over again because I'm an idiot. and like did something that made it get hacked. It's hard
That's
work.
not your fault, though.
Yeah.
You can't blame yourself for that.
Yeah.
No.
It's hard work, and like, what's the payoff? You know, where's it going?
Right.
I know I'm in at least 400 newspapers. That's my audience. I write
Right.
for them. They know how to contact me. They know my Facebook address, my Instagram. If they want to talk to me, talk to us. That's how I approach it.
And to me, it's sort of, I don't know, scary putting yourself out there where everybody has access to you. It's
That's
like,
a good point.
Yeah, I don't actually particularly enjoy that. I like knowing that people read my work. I like talking to them individually. Do I want everyone on the planet to be able to tell me what they think of me at any moment? That's not actually very much fun.
No, not
Yeah,
at
no,
all.
especially because
No, that's a really great
Let me
point.
ask you a question. This is totally unrelated to social media, but perhaps not. Growing up, one of the things that I loved about cartooning is that the possibility that people could know my name and my work, but never know what I look like.
Oh, that's a fun kind
And
of
like
thing.
when
Yeah.
we were the last generation where that was still possible to grow up and
That's
not
true.
have to ever have a public face. Did just out of curiosity, how did you all approach that when that started to happen? Because Dana makes the great point. Like, I don't want that. I don't welcome that. You know. But how did the two of you approach that?
I'm still pretty faceless, but every now and then I will get a letter like sent to my house.
Really?
Oh no,
No,
really?
see, that's
That's
so
the-
scary.
That's never happened to me.
People can't
Jeez
find that.
Louise.
I had a fan find my home phone number a few years. I guess home phone number.
Well, that's it for the show. I'm
my cell
horrified.
phone.
I'm quitting cartooning, everybody.
it's
That was
very
fun.
accessible.
My phone,
Well, we
my
had a
phone
good
rings,
run.
It's just like, is this Dana Simpson? Yes. Oh my God, is this really Dana Simpson? Yes. Oh my God, I'm such a huge fan.
Oh my God.
Okay, I gotta go.
Wow.
You're looking for the exits.
Oh God, that would terrify me.
Yeah.
Nope. I'm.
This letter was like asking, of course, for like an autograph and
Right.
sample art and stuff. And I was like, oh, this is sweet. And like, I picked up and I started responding. And I started like going, hold on. Hold on.
Yeah, because you're opening
I
up
send
Pandora's
this-
box.
Oh, yeah.
If I
Yeah.
send something back,
Goes
he's gonna
right on the
know
Right,
that
you're confirming
I do live
the
at that
address.
house.
Yeah.
Isn't that horrible that we've got to think that way, though?
Yeah, like
That's
return to
nuts.
sender.
But that does explain why Hector didn't answer your mail, though. So that's
Yeah, I don't feel bad. I wasted the stamp.
That never got that sketch that Brad wanted. But I'm sorry, I cut you off. You were going
Oh
to say
no!
something.
But so let's talk about the next 5 years. Originally, we were talk 20 years, but Dave says I don't know what I'm going to do in the next 20 years. So let's talk. What does the next 5 years look like for you with all of these things that we've talked about and more? What are you looking forward to? What's your outlook for the next 5 years, Maria?
I just want to be in that joyful place writing and drawing stories. I have no idea what's going to happen in the world, but I have so many more stories to tell. So
Now,
that's where I'm headed.
your main property is Nat, and those Nat Enough books.
Yeah.
Is there at some point that we might see another series started up?
Yeah, I just did a pitch, so I don't have any answers yet, but for another younger reader series. So I feel like there's so many things I want to do. I need clones or something. Maybe I
Yeah.
get AI to clone myself. If that could work, then I
I was
can
gonna
work
say-
on all these projects simultaneously
Yes.
or something.
Yeah, somebody you could trust, like yourself,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Hector, what's the
Right.
next 5 years look like for
You
you?
know, the newspaper business is such flux. I mean,
Yes.
we don't know where it's going, what's going to happen, where it's going to end up. I'm lucky, at least, that Carlos and Baldo is kind of growing somewhat, but I'm not sure how. It's a good sign for now.
Right.
Hopefully, fingers crossed, things are steady for at least another I'm 60, at least another 15 years. That things hold steady, but after that, the graphic, young adult graphic novels are certainly something we're exploring, and then the TV show. If we can get back into production, get another season ordered, that's where I'll be spending probably more time.
Yeah.
How about you, Dana? What do you see on the horizon for the next 3 to 5 years?
Okay, I'm about to freak out the sales department again.
Again, I like you throwing again in there.
I have been speculating increasingly publicly about what the future of Phoebe and her unicorn actually is. And I've known for a while that eventually I'm just going to bow to reality and just start writing it as graphic novels full time. The strip
Yeah.
has existed for 12 years and been in syndication for almost 10. So I don't know. That's a good long run for a strip. I'm not going to quit this year, but there will be a time, probably in the next 5, that I kind of wind down the syndicated strip and just give myself over full time to writing it as graphic novels because kids and YA graphic novels, that's, as you noted earlier, exploded. And it's a
Right.
huge niche
Yeah.
now. It's where I make most of my money. I think most of my fans probably don't even know it's a comic strip. They just encounter it in book form and read it. It seems like just a very episodic graphic novel. So, yeah, I feel like maybe I've been writing comic strips since I was a teenager. Or if you want to go back to the first one, since I was in kindergarten. So, like, I feel like maybe both in terms of what the marketplace is demanding and what I feel like doing, talk to me in 5 years, I'll be a full-time graphic novelist.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would also like to do television. Phoebe has been optioned twice.
Really?
By Amazon Studios and then by Nickelodeon. It fell through both times. I could talk about that all day.
Yeah.
But, you know, if it happens, it happens, great. If it doesn't happen, I'm very happy doing what I'm doing.
Well, what's great is I absolutely see a sidebar for these three afterward. Everybody
Yes.
talking about YA or TV to one another. This is great.
Yeah.
Well, let me
Yeah.
ask you just as part of the joy-filled aspect of comics, because this sort of plays into the next 5 years. Brad and I, when we're thinking about our own careers, we often talk about how genuinely, we don't know that we'll ever retire because we love the art and craft of cartooning. Like physically sitting and making a drawing is such a joy-filled process. And I'm not setting you up for a failure with this question, but do you see yourselves retiring? And feel free to jump in, whoever might like to jump in on that one.
Yeah, I don't. I'll be here in my wheelchair.
Yeah.
In 25 years, I'll be like, oh, look, there's that old guy. And I'll be like, oh, it's me. Yeah, I mean, you just do it. It's fun work. It's a great job. I love being a cartoonist and writing my comic strip and being in newspapers and having people who read it. I mean, all of us love that. It's really cool.
Absolutely.
And I don't see myself really retiring until I just can't do it anymore, and I'm just physically unable to. And I know everybody's gone through it. I mean, we know cartoonists. Well, I won't say names, but people couldn't draw anymore. Disabled in some way, but
Right.
I just hope I never get there. I hope I can do this till I'm way up there.
What steps do you take to, because I got a feeling if we went through the line, and let me know if this is not true, everybody's going to have a very similar answer to that. I want to keep doing it for as long as I can. What, if any, other than just kind of knock on wood and hope for the best, you mentioned yoga at the very top of the show. What steps would you suggest anybody listening take to improve their chances of longevity? Is it
interesting.
yoga? Is it?
I don't know.
What
I
is
don't
it?
know. But I don't know. I mean, I've always been interested in health, nutrition, preventative medicine, exercise. It's just part of my creative process because I feel like I want to stay kind of healthy and strong. But I don't know. I found out what works for me. I have no idea what works for anybody else. For now, I mean, who knows? Maybe
Yeah.
I would walk out and drop dead on the way out. I don't know. Maybe it's not working. I don't know.
Well, I can tell from your affirmative that you want to do this. You never want to retire. You
Oh
want to do
no,
this as
I
long as you
love
can.
it. I love it, and it's so funny. There's so many things. I find so much joy in so many things about the process, and I love traveling and just wandering around and looking at things as a form of inspiration. And I'll be doing so much stuff, and some friends that aren't in the business are like, you should just relax. I'm like, that's my worst nightmare. I get so much joy from making things. It's not I don't feel like I'm a workaholic. It's more like there's so many things I want to communicate. I don't think it's about this idea I have to work. It's I love it. I want to say more. I want to create more.
Right.
Quickly, I had a full-time job like most cartoonists.
Yeah.
I had a full-time job up until maybe 3 years ago, and I decided to do Baldo full-time. And friends would actually say, "Oh, you're retired now," and I'm like, "No, I'm working. I just have a really cool job, but
Yeah.
it's not retirement."
I've never had a real job. Well, that's not true. In my early 20s, I had some real jobs, but then I was in grad school. I didn't really want to be in grad school, but I went because I didn't know what else to do. Ozzy and Millie we weren't making money off webcomics 20 years ago.
No.
No one knew how to make money off it. I think people do a little more now, but and so I was in grad school, and my eventual spouse, who's sitting there in the front row, was like, "Look, if all you want is to draw comics, move in with me. I will make you not have to have a day job while you
Take
figure
that offer.
That's
Take
what
that
you
offer.
call
I
a
jumped
keeper.
at it. It was the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
And so Yeah, if we could, I wouldn't need to have a day job now, but even back when I was making nothing, I didn't have to. And it's the most painful advice I have to give kids. Like, marry someone with a job.
But do you ever see yourself retaring in one form or another
I
for
can imagine
cartooning?
I imagine myself slowing down.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think all of us could
Yeah,
slow
good
down.
answer, yeah.
My pace right now, I have to keep up a syndicated cartoonist pace and do a strip every day. And also, I'm working on 2 graphic novel projects at once that are in various stages. And it's a lot.
Yeah.
I imagine myself in 20 years, say, when I'm in my 60s, being kind of slower, maybe having a graphic novel I'm working on, but taking time off from that process whenever I want to. It gets done when it gets done. That sounds relaxing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Well,
does.
speaking of half relaxing and half work, I have a fun question about the future of cartooning because we've all tried out working digitally. Digital devices are getting smaller. Tuscany, Italy exists as a place. I wanted to ask you, have any of you tried or are planning to try a mobile life in cartooning? Like, I'm going to go live in XYZ for 6 months and bring these 3 devices and my Dropbox connection, and I'm still good to go. Maybe in the pandemic you tried it, maybe after the pandemic. Has anybody thought about that as far as a mobile cartooning career in Tuscany, say?
Well, Tuscany sounds awesome. I've done many writing trips where I would just bring my iPad and my laptop, but usually for me it works best. And I think Dana mentioned this before when I'm in the writing stage, especially
Yeah.
with just my laptop. And I do really well to get out of the house. I don't like writing in the house. I almost feel like I'm like sort of on house arrest. It's this weird feeling, but my mind is so open when I'm somewhere else. So I've done a lot of just travel trips, just like I have a writing project. I went to Madeira, an island, a Portuguese island that's kind of off
Yeah.
Morocco. That was nice. So yes, I don't know about moving though. Totally, I've got a little dog, and he's not. I don't think that. I think that would be the problem.
Yeah. Well, the reason this is a kind of a cool topic because did you read a little while ago that you can buy a lighthouse from the U.S. government? You can buy a lighthouse. They're decommissioned. I want to work in a lighthouse so bad I can't even tell you.
What?
I don't know.
What happens when you run out
I
of
wanna
snacks?
live- I
though?
wanna be in
when
a
you're like, oh, I
lighthouse.
need to go get some snacks, and you're me and your little motorboat.
We're learning a lot about Brad White. That's so isolated, and like people go crazy in lighthouses. Why would you? I mean, maybe
It's a
listen.
short trip for me.
A short
But
trip.
Seriously, by the time you get up all those stairs, if you decide you want to make a snack run, you got to think twice. Plus, you want a good place with good lighting. This is the place they got.
Holy hell! You don't need
Yeah,
to buy a light box.
lighthouse.
That's for
There you
sure.
go.
Yeah.
I want to work in a lighthouse so bad. I'm telling you.
What's stopping you?
Yeah.
I gotta say, this has never come up in our friendship. This is new to me that here. Oh my God, we're gonna have a long talk about this afterward. I'm saying Tuscany. He's saying a lighthouse. I'm not. So, Dana, Hector, have you ever considered a mobile life or a traveling life while cartooning?
I would need my spouse and my cat to come with me. Right now,
Okay.
I'm sort of tied to one spot by the fact that my spouse has a job that, unlike mine, is geographically tethered. But if that weren't true, sure. I mean, we've started traveling a bit more. I think you'd be game for that, right? Yeah. We've talked about doing more traveling, relocating to some other places.
I don't know about a lighthouse, but
Yeah, probably not a lighthouse.
Listen. You don't have to gang up. I'm just saying, consider it. Just consider it.
I'm not saying
Crying
you
out
can't
loud.
live in a lighthouse. Go nuts. I'll visit your lighthouse.
Does a lighthouse have internet? I mean, is it?
How can it not? I mean, you're up there.
Put a big tower right on the top.
You put an attic up there or an antenna, and you've got it.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. All right. Well.
I'm still stuck on the snacks. If I can't easily run out and get snacks, I can't work. I just can't.
Hector, get me out of this morass I'm in. If you could live anywhere and work, what would it be?
Well, I've already started doing that in small pieces. Like we'll travel with friends, my wife and friends, and go to Europe or go traveling somewhere. And I just take my laptop. I wake up early because it's a different time zone. I go to a local coffee shop, and you can do that from anywhere.
Yeah.
So I'm like
it's
in a
great.
coffee shop in Amsterdam, and I'm writing.
See, that's normal. That's not a lighthouse. Amsterdam is normal.
I love
But
Amsterdam.
that's for a short, amount
Yeah.
of time. And
Thank
then I
you,
come
Hector.
back-
Yes,
then
that's
I come back
yes.
to Dallas. Now, my wife and I have thought about like, hey, let's spend a month like in Santa Fe.
Right.
Just rent an Airbnb for a month. We work there, and then go back to Dallas or somewhere else. So yes,
Yeah.
it's out there. I don't know about long periods of time, like 6 months or a year. We have a new grandson, and my wife is like,
Hey!
I'm leaving.
That's
the grandson
awesome.
for more than a few weeks.
Well, let me go ahead, David.
I was just thinking, and like it kind of struck me that I'm sort of doing that now.
Yeah.
Because like I'm from Seattle, but for the last 8 years or something, we've lived in Santa Barbara, which is a little bit like being on vacation, low key, all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Santa Barbara's
And
gorgeous.
it's for somebody who grew up in a wet, dark place.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of already feels like I've left for someplace a little more idyllic.
Yeah, Santa Barbara is winning the regional lottery. It's like
Yes.
amazing wine,
nice
amazing
place to
views.
work.
Yeah, it's not a salt mine that someone lives in by themselves.
Let me tell you this. I may be reconsidering, but I can tell you right now, if I could be anywhere in the world right now, there'd be no place I'd rather be than with these fine cartoonists who have been joining us today. My friends, help me thank Maria Scrivan, Hector Cantu, and Dana Simpson. Let's give them a big round of applause.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. This was fun.
And once again, a huge thank you to our guests for this week's tremendous live show. Maria Scrivan, who you should go check out her work for the YA graphic novel series Nat Enough. Hector Cantu, writer of the amazing comic strip Baldo that you should absolutely go check out. Dana Simpson, the creator of the comic strip Phoebe and Her Unicorn, which Run, Don't Walk. Go check out that one as well. And to all three, we say a huge thank you.
That's right. Now you've been listening to ComicLab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been my delightful friend Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Inc. at evilcomic.com.
And my close personal friend Dave Kellett, the co-director of the comics documentary Stripped and the cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com.
And I will give you a heads up, tune in next week for our second part NCS interviews featuring this year's Reuben winner, Hillary Price, this year's comic strip Silver Reuben winner, Tawhid Bondia, and a really wonderful illustrator, Silver Reuben nominated illustrator, Danish Mohiuddin. And I want to take one quick opportunity to say tune in next week for the second part of our wonderful NCS interviews featuring this year's Reuben winner, Hillary Price, this year's comic strip Silver Reuben winner, Tawhid Bondia, and the wonderful Silver Reuben nominated illustrator, Danish Mohiuddin. All three delightful guests on a recorded show, so make sure to check that out next week.
Absolutely. The Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net, and this episode was edited by Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
And I will say, if you love Comic Lab, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode. And Comic Lab is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So I will go ahead and say that twice, patreon.com/see you next week.